Hey guys, welcome to Tall Tales with Taco. I'm your host, Mitch Taco Bell. Tonight, it's a real treat. All right, an honor to have Jeff Senour on the podcast. Jeff, if you've ever watched that show, the commercial with the most interesting man in the world, that's Jeff. All right, this guy is not only a retired commercial airline pilot, civilian GA pilot, stunt pilot, movie coordinator, you name it, helicopters, fixed wing. Um, and a rocker. So it was kind of appropriate at the very beginning having the picture of him in his uniform playing guitar with a little rock behind it. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on. How are you, Jeff?
Taco, I'm great. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love the intro, by the way. It's great.
Oh, it was. As I put it together, I'm going, oh, dude, he's got the guitar, he's rocking. I go, this is going to be good rock music. We got to put some music on.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Well done.
No, I love it. So you and I met years ago at a little function called Skyball through our
Yeah.
mutual friend Jim Palmershine, which is a
Yes.
great. That was a great volunteer opportunity that we had as employees um,
Yeah.
for the military. And how did you and Jim cross paths to be able to get in there and play?
Yeah. I first met Jim. I was a pilot at Southwest Airlines, and American was the main sponsor for Snowball Express. And then Southwest got a little involved in it. One of the chairman of Snowball was a Southwest pilot, and he got me introduced to the whole group, and our band ended up playing for Snowball. And then Jim, as you know, is quite the entrepreneur putting events like that together. So they started Skyball, and that's where we met. I think I performed a couple of years at Skyball, and like you called it a little event. It's like a huge, pretty
Yeah.
remarkable event. It's pretty amazing what they do.
Oh, there must have been 4 or 5 thousand people, at
Yeah,
every one of these events in a giant airplane hangar of all things.
yeah. It's over the top. It's so, and that's Jim. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Aside from
Yeah, there
flying
was
airplanes. So
yeah, it was a really good time back when we did it. I definitely
yeah.
enjoyed it. I can't remember, did you open for Gary Sinise?
We did a couple of times, yeah. We did it Snowball Express, and we did it. I think we did it Skyball as well. Yeah, I've known Gary. He's a great guy, such a great patriot as well.
Have
So
you ever have you jammed with him? You guys
I
gone up
have
there on?
not. I have not. I'd love to though. Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about a guy from Hollywood that's done so much, and yet he's so his main he is so into the veterans and helping this country and being
Yeah.
a patriot, and it's really remarkable for somebody out of Hollywood to do that. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's
there
it's an honor to do it.
yeah, his, falling into Forrest Gump, getting that role, not falling, he deserved it 150%. Getting
Yeah,
that role in Forrest Gump definitely was the thing that helped projectile, I mean, him into the atmosphere. And to,
absolutely.
and to be a proud patriot, I love the documentary on his dad or grandfather, who was in World War II.
I
Oh,
think his
I
good
think it was
question.
his, I think it was his grandfather. Um,
Okay,
I'm
it
having a
makes
mind blank.
sense age-wise. I would think grandfather. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was grandfather was aviator or flew in the war,
Hmm.
and he's just always been a very very big proponent of the military.
Yeah,
Uh, so to play Lieutenant Dan, he takes that with his in his heart of I have to help these guys.
absolutely. Yeah, and I've got some pictures that I cherish that with him. With he was with my band, and he posed with a picture. He's just a great guy. He's approachable and super nice, and it's like you said, so committed to our vets. He's still doing Snowball. He took over Snowball,
Yes.
so they're doing that once a year in Florida now. I think is where they
You,
take it.
the funny story I have is Jim comes up to me and he goes, I'm in my evening dress Marine Corps uniform, and he comes up and goes, Taco, come here. I need a favor. What's that, Jim? He goes, I need you to escort Gary Sinise to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll
That's
be the
funny.
blocker, because
Yeah,
everybody wants a photo with them, and it takes 20
right.
to the bathroom. So Gary goes, "Hey, Taco, we're just going to bolt straight, heads down. I'll kind of say hi
Yeah.
to you on by, but we got to use the restroom." For some reason, they didn't have a trailer for him, like a comfort trailer back behind
Uh,
the stage. And so we went through the crowd. We made it through the crowd, and then he stops me and he goes, "All right, here's the deal. When we go in, I'm gonna kinda literally walk in, turn left, go to the corner, and just kind of be looking down.
that's funny.
I want
Yeah.
you to go to the very end, to the last 2 stalls, make sure those are empty, turn around, give me a thumbs up, then you stand in front of the second stall to the end, and do not let anybody in that stall." And I go, "Okay, great." So I do it.
Wow.
He runs in, he goes to the bathroom. Of course, people were like, "Oh, Gary's in here, Gary's in here." And then
That's
he
funny.
he gets done, he goes up, washes his hands, and he's out the door. Well, he told me later, I said, "That was the craziest thing, the bathroom thing." He goes, "That's the price of fame. You can't even stand at the toilet by yourself
Yeah.
at a urinal because somebody will look over at you. And 9 times out of the 10, they're drunk and they'll turn around and go, 'Oh my God, it's Gary Sinise.' You know, 'Hey man, can you take a selfie with me?' And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm trying to go to the bathroom." So I felt bad for
Yeah.
the guy. But
It's
he
as wonderful as it is, it's in a curse. It's in a way a curse because they can't,
Yeah.
like you said, you can't go anywhere. You know, I flew. I used to fly John Travolta a lot, and when I put him in my book, a story with him, and he one day we're talking. I was flying with him, and he was getting kind of rated in his first Learjet and getting
Oh, wow.
his experience. So insurance required that he went with a qualified captain, and so we're talking one night on the ramp, Southern California. He goes, Jeff, I just wish I could meet a nice girl and fall in love and get married. And I remember going, you're John Travolta. What are you talking about? And he goes, that's the thing. I want to fall in love for somebody with who I am, not what I am. And
True. God, yeah.
so that was a profound lesson to me. That what they deal with fame.
Was that before? Was that, I guess, after he had the total electrical failure in New York in his Learjet, right?
I don't, probably before, yes. Yeah, because he had
Because
just gotten his Lear. Yeah.
because when I was a new hire in '98, I'm walking down the hallway with my partner Dave Manning, and as we passed a room, Dave grabbed my arm and stopped me and goes, because we were looking for an empty room that has the boards on it, we could practice our
Hmm.
flows in the 7.2 as an engineer. And he goes, "Hey, did you see who that was?" I'm like, "No." And I popped my head back and looked, and holy crap, it's John
John
Travolta.
Travolta.
I
Wow.
go, "Let's go
That's
say hi to him,"
cool.
because he was just sitting by
Yeah.
himself, right? So we walked
Yeah.
in. "Hey, Mr. Travolta, Mitch Bell, Dave Manning, how are you, sir?" And he's like, "Oh man," and he sounded exactly like he did from Primary Colors, like
Uh,
Bill Clinton. And
yeah.
he goes, "Hey man,
Yeah.
how are you guys?" I said,
That's
"Great. What are
awesome.
you doing here in America?" And he goes, "Ah man, I just bought me a 707." "What are you gonna
Yeah,
do with
why
the
not?
707?" He goes, "Fly it, dude."
Yeah.
Wow. He goes, "Yeah,
How
Americans
cool is
got a
that?
sim, so I'm getting checked out.
Uh-huh.
I'm getting my type rating."
Yeah, yeah, he's amazing. I just
He is.
saw him three weeks ago. I'm kind of getting off track, but we've performed
No.
at Living Legends of Aviation in
Yeah.
Beverly Hills, and it's their 22nd year. So they booked my band and I to do the after party. So, and we also had a table. They donated a table to us, which was amazing. That there's
Oh,
sixteen
cool.
thousand dollars for a table, and then I got to. So my band and I and a couple of our guests. I took Robert Kiyosaki, who's a friend of mine. He's the author,
Yeah,
and
Rich Man, Poor
yeah,
Man.
yeah. I
Or
took
Rich
Robert.
Rich
He
Dad,
was
Poor Dad, yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. So he was a Vietnam helicopter pilot, and I've flown Robert, so I invited Robert. But I got to see John, and it was kind of cool because I talked to Mr. Lips, who runs the whole Living Legends, and they raise money for youth to get interested in aviation. And our photographer said, "Yeah, Jeff used to fly John and Kurt Russell and all these people." And he goes, "Really?" So, he goes, "Follow me." And so I followed him backstage, and we both go backstage, and there's John Travolta in the green room, And now I'm going, I don't know if he's going to remember me, who knows? It's been years. And he literally looks up and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I go, "John, do you remember me?" He goes, "Are you kidding? Of course. What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, my band is playing." He goes, "You have a band?" That's so we had this reunion for about 10 minutes and got to talk to him, got pictures with
That's
him.
so cool.
Yeah, he was just as nice as can be. And
He,
same with Kurt Russell. I got to see Kurt as well there. So,
that would be a guy I would love to meet. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, I can tell you, John sat there and ate shelled peanuts, drank Pepsi, and talked to us about flying
he
for
loved
5
aviation.
minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his
Yeah,
passion,
yeah,
aviation. I mean,
it really
it
is.
really is. And Kurt Russell was at the event too. He's been inducted into Living Legends, and I got to go. I got a moment where I got to be next to him and talk to him. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Russell, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to fly you and Goldie to Aspen, and when I was a young guy, and I also worked on Executive Decision." He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember. How's it going?" And so it was just this cool reunion, to get to go to that event and black tie, and then we got to rock the house at the end, so
So cool. All
fun
right, so
stuff.
go back. How your family is aviation, right?
My dad was a private pilot. So my mom was a musician, a violinist. My dad was I call him an adventure seeker. Dad was kind of one of these guys that, I think he lived vicariously through me, being his son. And so we tried everything. Let's try surfing. Let's try scuba diving. Let's try. The only thing we didn't do was skydiving, but he was a private pilot, flew Piper Cubs and Cherokees, and so
Oh,
as a
nice.
kid, we'd go up all the time, and I have a picture of myself in a car seat in a Piper Cub, and Dad, probably to the disagreement of my mom, but we went up, and he'd open that window, and the air's
Yeah.
blowing on, going 60 miles an hour in a Piper Cub, and so I was hooked as a kid,
Yeah.
and that passion for aviation that we all have, and so it's that's where it started, and
And
then
was that your first remember? I mean, I remember my first flight at 6 years old on a 727, sitting, up in the cockpit. Was that
mhm,
your first memory of flying? Was with your dad in that Cub,
it
or do you
is,
remember?
yeah, yeah. And then when I was probably by the time I was about 9, I remember he would rent a Piper. I think it was a Archer. It was
Mhm.
a low wing Piper, and we would go up. I could hardly see over the dash, but I was able to actually control the plane, fly. Couldn't land it, but so dad, I had that bug. But little did I really know that I would ever go into it as a living and a career. You know,
Well,
um,
how did you get into it? I mean, not military, civilian, right?
Yeah, yes, and that's kind of a cool story about living dreams, and
Yeah.
it's also in my book. I talk about it. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was my dream. I used to watch the Blue Angels. We lived near Moffett Field in Sunnyvale, and Dad would take me every year to the air show, and I'd marvel at the Blue Angels as we all do. And
Right.
so when I was in college, I went to the recruiter, and I uh, sat down with him and said, "I want to be a fighter pilot." And one of the first things he asked was, "Do you wear glasses or contacts?" And I said, "Well, I wear contacts. I don't have perfect vision." He said, "Well, you can't be a fighter pilot." He said, "You can, once you're in, you can have corrective vision, but what you cannot be entered. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it." And I was devastated. And I remember him saying, "Well, you could be a navigator. You could sit in the back seat." I'm like, I don't want to be a navigator. I want to fly the plane. I don't want to sit in the back seat." And so that kind of destroyed my dream for the moment. And I remember talking to my parents and thinking about it and just going, I'm going to figure out somehow, some way to do this. And so I met a guy in college that was a flight instructor, and he wanted to go fly. So he cut me a deal at his rate, and we'd go up in a Cessna 152. I'd save enough money from different jobs I did to go up for an hour or two, and eventually I got my private and instrument, commercial and multi, and then I started flight instructing out of Van Nuys, and and uh, and then my big first break in jets was I started flying for Clay Lacy. He was at Van Nuys.
You were with Clay Lacy?
Yeah, yeah. So which is interesting because at Living Legends of Aviation, Clay was there, and I got to spend some time with him. And I literally told him, this was 3 weeks ago. I said, Clay, you were my mentor into jets. I mean, you talk about learning how to fly a Learjet. I learned how to fly a Learjet. I mean, I learned from Clay how to take it to the limit and what that airplane was capable of, especially in the movie flying, because he did a lot of that work back then. And so it was kind of cool to see him again. And then I went on to compete against him. I met a guy named Bob Netman, who was a 5-time Academy Award winner. And Bob invented camera systems, and he had invented Clay's system, Astrovision, and he was in the process of inventing a new system called Vector Vision, and he needed a Learjet to house it in. So he said, I was at the time doing some SAG work in Hollywood, I worked on Fall Guy and Knight Rider and, all the different TV shows and some movies. And then that's how I met Bob. And he said, I need somebody to fly my system. And I've heard your name in the industry, so that's how life is. One thing leads to another, and people introduce you. I tell our youth, kindness, be kind, don't burn bridges, always do the most professional, go out of the way to go above and beyond. And so that's how I met Bob. And then I ended up flying Vector Vision, which was a competitor to Clay, which he didn't like very much at the time. And our first big break was McDonnell Douglas hired us to film the Blue Angels. They had just obtained the F-18s, and they wanted film footage of it. They wanted to do a movie called Ladies and Gentlemen, the Blue Angels. And so I remember now fast forwarding from the kid that was in the recruiter saying I would never be a fighter pilot to that moment when I'm sitting in the briefing room with the Blue Angels, literally going, I can't believe that I'm getting ready to go fly formation with the Blue Angels and film them.
Oh, stop. Did you ask number 7 for a backseat hop?
I didn't. No. They were their schedule was pretty tight. I'd love to do that. Yeah. But, because I taught aerobatics too in a pit. So I would have loved to have gone up in an F-18 and done that. But, I remember sitting there going, here I was, this guy that was told I'd never be a fighter pilot, and they're trusting me to be next to them in the air. And the first flight, the boss was, here's the rules of engagement. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're not going to do this and that. We're going to do this. And so we had all this major briefing, got down from the first flight, filmed them over the Sierra Nevadas. And the boss looked around the room and said, what do you guys think? How'd the liver do? They knew we were civilian, but I dressed my guys up in flight suits. We looked sharp. And we did everything as planned and briefed. And every guy in the room just said, amazing job. We love flying with the Lear. That was incredible. Can't wait to see the footage. What do we do on the next flight? Because let's brief it now. And so that was our foot in the door. And from then on, we went on to film many McDonnell Douglas missions, Boeing, Lockheed. We filmed the Thunderbirds a couple of times, the Snowbirds, all the black planes, out at NASA, and we did some pretty amazing stuff. So.
What about Boeing 787? You shot some of that delivery stuff?
Yeah. Before COVID, so I was kind of out of it for a while when I was at Southwest Airlines. Did a few things, like I filmed True Lies and Executive Decision, Hot Shots when I was during my tenure at Southwest. And the chief pilots were amazing because I'd go in and go, hey, I got called to do this movie called True Lies. I don't want a conflict. Is it okay? And they were like, as long as you don't call in sick, man, that's cool. Go, go have fun. So they thought it was great. But so we did a lot of Boeing work out of Seattle and also is it Charlotte? No, Charleston, where they build
Charleston. Yeah,
the
where they build them.
Dreamliner. Yeah, I've toured that factory. It's amazing.
It is. Oh, the factory tour is neat.
Yeah,
Anybody who gets a chance to do that or go up, do a delivery or go see Boeing,
yeah,
very cool. Kind of
yeah,
like Lockheed seeing the F-35 line. That was a tour I'll never forget either.
yeah.
Go back, True Lies. One of my favorite all-time aviation movies with the Harrier. What did you guys do in True Lies?
So True Lies, there's one shot in True Lies where the Harrier has to blow up the bridge,
Yeah,
and the bad guys on the bridge. So
right. They're in
James
the van.
Cameron, yeah. So James Cameron was the director and producer. We shot that in 35 millimeter film. That was right at the kind of the turn of the digital age,
Hmm.
and so they would shoot in film, and then in post production they would transfer it to digital, and they could do all their handiwork with it and editing. And so they had the truck on the bridge. The shot was
Yeah.
a strafing run where the Harrier blows up the bridge on the. What they did, they set up charges in the water at about a 45-degree angle to the bridge,
Uh-huh.
and then so there were a couple issues going on that I saw. First of all, was the speed. We're doing 300 knots. We were right over the shoulder of the Harrier, kind of, so the camera's looking down over his shoulder out in front. You can see the bridge, and then he's right in frame. And then the problem is the timing. So we have to be lined up with the charges in the water,
Uh-huh.
and B, the truck's got to be at the right spot and when that strafing run hits, so it looks real. If anything's off, it's an unusable shot. And so I told James Cameron, I said, there's a lot of timing issues going on here, and so I would like to rehearse it and practice it, before we actually shoot it. And I remember he said, you can rehearse it as much as you want, but when you tell me you're ready to do it, it better work. And I was like, yes, sir. No pressure,
No
so
pressure at all. Holy
yeah.
crap. And
So
what were you
so
flying? What were you in
I
next to
was a
the
Lear,
Harrier?
Lear 25. Yeah. I did
Is the
all the
camera on
camera
a
work.
pod or is it inside?
It's a periscope, so it's about 3.5, 4 inches in diameter with a
Uh-huh.
series of a tube of lenses. And the pod, it goes through the pressure vessel, and it's a turret at the bottom with a window and a tilting prism. The image goes in that prism up the tube, and the camera is housed on top of that tube. So the operator in the back, I can send you some B-roll of it if you want.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So yeah, I've got lots of B-roll I'll send you, and you can, if you want to use it on your show. But so he operates it. So I tell people that as the pilot, I'm the dolly. I call it a 300 mile an hour dolly, because we create motion. If you just pull up next to them, that's a still shot. But if you move around them, now
Yeah.
you've got this motion going. And so that's what we do. And we also have one out the top that we use on occasion. Like
Oh,
we did
wow.
a Bombardier ad, and they had Bombardier on the belly of the Global. And they said, can we get that? Like, yeah, we tucked right up under there. It says Bombardier, and then we pull back, and it reveals the plane. So,
Oh, that's
so it's
cool.
very creative as well. As the flying has to be, as there's no room for error. If something goes as not briefed, you call it off and go, okay, we'll talk about it on the ground. But the rest of it it's creative. It's an art. It's like film or music or any of that stuff. So that's what's fun about it.
So do you remember meeting the pilots that flew the Harriers?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, because we briefed extensively with them. Did you
So,
know
so
some of them?
yeah, so I was at Cherry Point at that time,
Really?
flying C-130s.
Okay.
And and the Harriers were all there. And what's so funny is those guys went down there, and it was a big deal that the squadron was used for
The
True Lies,
movie. Oh
for
my
the movie.
gosh.
Well,
Wow.
we were all in the base movie theater for an advanced screening of True Lies for the
Are,
Marines.
are you kidding? Wow. What a
No,
small
it was
world.
yeah, it was really
Yeah.
cool. So, but here's the best part. When the Harrier lands and Schwarzenegger goes up and goes, "I need to borrow your Harrier, Captain." And he
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
"Sir, you have to sign for that jet."
Uh-huh.
Everyone's looking like, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not Lumpy or whatever the hell his call sign was. What? Who is this guy?"
Uh-huh.
And then they go, "Yeah." They kind of admit it later on at the bar. Yeah, there was this reserve Marine that was there at the filming, and Cameron thought he looked more like a jet guy, so they put him in a flight suit. And he
Oh,
goes,
isn't
"Man."
that funny? Yeah, that's funny. That's Hollywood for you.
Yeah,
So,
so the actual pilot dudes didn't even get to flex in the
right.
film. They had some
Yeah.
Lance Corporal in a flight suit.
That's funny. Yeah, that scene where they land on the bridge, we were all there watching that. And and Jamie Lee Curtis was out there and Arnold, and we're
Yeah.
all watching them. And I think the military made him, they had standards for the landing pad of
Uh-huh.
the Harrier. So James Cameron goes, okay, I'll just they build a to spec landing pad for a Harrier for one shot.
Really?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
about when he takes the Harrier and he's climbing out? Was that thing attached to a crane, and then later on they just
They
did
had
the
a crane. Yeah, the one where it pulls up to the building. That's on a. I think that shoots the building,
yeah.
and yeah, that's on a crane. And then James Cameron told me if I get an image on film, I I can put Arnold in the cockpit. I can do anything. Once I get that image, I can do anything. And of course, this was
Really?
prior to the computer power they have today
Yeah,
with digital filming. Now they're 8K or whatever they're shooting in,
sure.
and so that's why so much CGI we watch. To me, it's almost like there's almost too much nowadays because it's almost and our senses get so used to the overload of
Mhm.
CGI, so I love that. I remember James Cameron telling me we will never leave film ever. We'll always shoot in film because of the
Really?
warmth of it, the colors. Yeah, at that time they literally felt that, oh, digital will never be good enough,
Yeah.
and then look where it went. So pretty
Well,
crazy.
did another movie that I saw in IMDb you were in was Space Cowboys that I loved that
Uh
movie.
huh. Oh yeah, with
Did you
Clint
film
Eastwood.
the stairman scenes? What scenes did you
No,
film?
there's a couple of scenes where the couple of T-38s join up on the space
Space shuttle,
shuttle.
right?
Yeah, and there's one scene where there's two T-38s, and then the camera goes through the middle of them. It's like the space shuttle's approaching, and then we did
Yeah.
the shot. We had a nose camera, and we did the shot, the big steep descent, and then kind of a flare into the runway. So those were our shots for
Oh, so
that.
you were the space shuttle from the point of view from the space shuttle.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and they can, of course, the Lear is so maneuverable. We can do those kind of pretty steep dives, and then they undercrank what they call undercrank the camera. So a normal camera shoots at 24 frames per second.
Uh-huh.
If they undercrank it to say 18 or 20, it speeds up the action. So you can simulate like a space shuttle speed. So
Gotcha. All right.
yeah.
Something I was going to ask that triggered a memory. Back in '92, we went out to Barking Sands, Hawaii, to do missile testing for the Navy, and we
Okay.
had we had two F4s from a company called Tricor out of the Mojave Desert, and they would you go up to 50,000 feet, launch a drone down on the Aegis class cruiser, and they launch missiles. But there was a Learjet flying around with telemetry cameras and all this stuff. Did you guys do that by chance?
That wasn't us. No, I think
Okay.
that was another company that did that kind of work. I forget the name of them. I think those were like Lear 35s they used. We
Okay.
did do a lot of work out at NASA, out at Edwards,
Uh-huh.
So Edwards, they had pretty much just a guy in the back seat of a fighter handheld camera. That was the best they could do. Well, they found out about our system and started using us regularly. I mean, we filmed the B-52, the X-29, the X-31.
Wow.
We filmed the Pegasus rocket launch. That was a crazy deal. A rocket coming off of B-52, and we were pretty much next to it and got a shot of it. And then we did all the high angle of attack research for the F-18s.
Yeah.
That's all our footage, and so we did a lot. Aside from feature films, a lot of R&D work for NASA, Boeing, Douglas, all that stuff. And that was always interesting to me because it taught me a lot about what goes into designing these aircraft. As regular commercial pilots, oh, this speed is this, our flap speed's this and that, but what they do in flight tests to prove what these planes are capable of, I remember a Douglas pilot once telling me, he says, we kind of have to prove to the FAA that some moron could get way out of control in this thing and it's still going to stay together. And
Yeah.
so I learned a lot about flight tests and everything from those guys.
Did you ever get to do anything in Area 51?
No, never got to go there. We got close, but never in there. Yeah.
I was gonna say, never saw anything round, saucery looking.
No. I did film the F-117, but that was kind of after it was out in U-2 F-117. But that was after they were everybody knew what they were.
What they were, yeah. Declassified.
Yeah.
God, that is cool. And
The
so,
black
what do you?
airplanes were always interesting because they were, you've flown a lot of formation, a black airplane, if it's got a wing up at you, coming at you, or a wing away, going away, it's hard to tell if
Yeah.
he's coming at you. You got to be real careful. Is he coming at me or going away from me? Because it's just a silhouette. It's black.
So how do you, when we would do formation, you would pick a light, or there was a point on the wingtip or the prop or the fuselage to a wingtip, and if you got right there where you could see this, and this, you would be in perfect formation. Um, and all of the airplanes are different. So how do you pick the points on certain jets when you go up there? Is there a certain thing that you look for, or?
Yeah, and our formation is different than kind of a standard military formation because we're actually maneuvering around that plane. We're not just on the wing or a slot in the underneath the belly. So most of the time, like let's say a Dreamliner we're filming, most of the 80% of the time, 90% of the time, he's the lead, we're the wing, and how important that is, who knows who's what, and because that's when we're going to hit each other if we get confused who's the lead, who's not. But if we do a front, say a nose crossover or a tail crossover, he's still in the lead, and but we brief it extensively. Hey, I'm starting off here at your 1 o'clock. I'm gonna do a nose sweep. We're not switching leads, but I still let him know where we're at. So, and then with the camera, as you cross his nose, you can see your monitor, and I just usually mark the altitude, and like you can see him deconflict. You go, okay, we're clear. We're not going to hit him, and so it's different than a standard kind of formation that where you're sighting on a light or whatever.
Well, what about wake turbulence or any? Have you ever had any bad calls?
I've gotten. I learned I learned a lot about wake turbulence. Never had any real bad calls, but you flew a C-130. That turns out some big wake compared to even jets. Those props. I've flown a lot of formation next to a C-130, and so you learn where not to be. But it's amazing how people are amazed how close you can get. You can put a wingtip right in your windshield and that of a big airliner, but it's going behind you, so you're not in danger or anything. But yeah, you definitely never want to get where that is and get rolled up in it because that could be fatal, of course. So.
Yeah. Well, I've just, a little wing, little vortices there. You get caught up in the wake turbulence, and hell, that could,
Yeah,
flip you at altitude. That's not something you want for sure.
yeah, yeah. And most of our filming we do below 18,000. So
Oh,
up
okay.
high, yeah, we don't do it up high because, as you know, rejoins and all of that, nothing happens fast when you're at altitude. So,
Yeah.
yeah, plus we can fly VFRs, a flight of two, and just get flight following and not worry about, we're not IFR, we're not above 18, and the air's thicker. It's easier to fly down there. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
True. And you can't
so
tell how high you are. You could be 50,000 feet. Nobody knows.
yeah,
General
yeah,
public wouldn't know. What now that you're retired, so as
both.
we lovingly say, um, they always say you're busier now than you were when you were working full time. What
Yeah.
are you doing now? What is Jeff doing out there in the world?
Yeah, it's funny. Before I retired from Southwest, my wife took me aside and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "Well, I'm a little concerned where you're going to go 3 days a week, and when you retire from Southwest." And so I said, "Well, I don't know yet, but I know I'm going to do something." And so one thing kind of led to another, and I ended up went back into the corporate world, back into the film world,
Uh-huh.
flying an Eclipse, a Lear 60. Flew the film jet out of Van Nuys when we do Boeing work and everything. And then last year a year ago, I got typed in a Falcon 2000. And so I'm flying that a little bit. And then met the helicopter company out of Scottsdale, H5. I was doing a music gig there, believe it or not. They wanted a singing pilot for an event they had in the hangar. So, and they had this beautiful A-Star, and I met the owner, and I said, "Hey, when I retire from Southwest, I'd love to get back into helicopters." And he said, "Oh my gosh, we're kind of looking for a couple of backup pilots," and so that led into that, and so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So
Where are you living? Are you out near San Diego or?
I'm in Phoenix. Yeah,
Oh, you are. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So Scottsdale, I fly a lot out of Scottsdale right
Oh,
now.
nice.
Yeah.
And do you have a private airplane yourself?
No, I used to own a Pitts. I had a two-seat S2B, which I loved, out of Burbank, and we used to teach aerobatics in it. I had two partners in it, and we competed a little bit, but mainly I just like to take it up for rides and fly it, and then we taught aerobatics to a lot of. We contracted with a lot of the flight schools there at Burbank for spin
Yeah.
training and things like that.
Oh,
So yeah, but I learned owning a plane is kind of, it's really not my thing. It's they cost a lot of money, and you
yeah.
got to be
Yeah.
pretty dedicated to own a plane. So
Yeah, I've had two airplanes in my life, and
have you?
yeah, I had started out with a Cherokee 140, 67 140, which I love flying that big
That's a
old
great
horsepower
airplane.
wings. Great
Yeah,
airplane, forgiving,
yeah, yeah.
fun. A 5 hour trip in a car might be an hour and a half in the airplane, or
Isn't
two
that
hours in the
awesome?
airplane,
Yeah, yeah.
depending on the headwinds. But then I transferred. I always wanted a Stearman, but I
Oh my
couldn't.
gosh.
I couldn't afford a Stearman, so I bought a 1929 Fleet 2 biplane.
Wow.
Love that airplane. I had that.
You
I
have
had
it
her for
now
about 10
then?
years. No, I
You,
sold. I
okay,
sold the Fleet in 2008 when I was going over to Afghanistan on a ground tour,
okay.
and I kind of thought to myself, I'm not going to fly. When I was in Iraq, I would have a buddy go across. He would pull the airplane out, start it, taxi it around the field, and then go back and put
Yeah,
her in the hangar. I'm like, "Well,
yeah,
go fly her." And he goes, "Nah, I don't want to fly her because if I ball her up or something happens,
yeah.
I don't want you to come back from Iraq with a wrecked plane. Have to deal
Oh,
with that." And I go, "I
yeah.
trust you." Nah, 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 that's all right. But it was enough for him to just run her up and taxi her around for 30 minutes and then go
Yeah.
push her back in the hangar. I came back to a great airplane. And then in '08, when I got this tour, I thought, if I get killed, I don't want my wife to have to deal with selling the plane.
Mm.
And if I get wounded, I don't want to see, and I can't fly, I don't want to see the plane. So,
Right, right.
looking at the dark side of the worst case scenario type thing. So I sold her to a guy in Australia, and it's classic, man. I put an ad in Trade a Plane. I got 3 tire kickers. I
Mm.
put an ad in barnstormers.com with cost me $5 with 10 photos. I
Wow.
get this guy from Australia going. I could just hear him typing away. Hi, mate. I'd like to know, how long's the fuselage? How long's the top wing, each wing? So I'm
Wow.
measuring all this stuff out for him.
Yeah.
And he did. His son bought my buddy Mike Smith's cabin Waco, and
Oh
then
man.
he bought my fleet, and they put them both in a shipping container together and shipped them back to Australia. And,
Wow. So that's where they are now.
yeah,
Wow.
in
How
Brisbane. So
cool is
he
that?
has the only fleet in Australia, mate. And he sounds just like
Amazing.
that. He's like, yeah, man.
That,
He calls me up. Hey, mate.
amazing.
Yeah. I'd like to buy your airplane, mate. Yeah, no worries. I said, all right.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, what
Now
a
here's
cool story. Yeah.
small world. Small world is that
Yeah.
dude went to grade school with my cousin down in Australia. It
Yeah.
was small world.
Couple degrees of separation, man, like
Yeah.
they say. So you're
Yeah.
a tail dragger guy too, You're
Oh
good
yeah,
stuff.
that's real flying. I
Yeah.
flew Citabrias and Cubs,
Yeah.
and then I bought my fleet, and I'm like the postman that would get off work, go fly 8 hours
Yeah.
at the airline, come back, go pull, beautiful night, go pull the fleet out, hand prop that son of a gun, get her going, and jump in and go fly for another 45 minutes. It was great.
Wow. Yeah. You're a true aviator for sure. It's awesome.
Well, we all have. We kind of talked about that on your show. We have been bit at one time or another to be an aviator.
Yeah.
Yet you can't do this job for the money.
Yeah.
The money's good now, but you can't be in this business for the money. You have to be in it for the love, and you have to be in
Yeah.
it, especially in our career line. It's customer service, so you have to be there for the people. You
Hmm.
know, I go back every leg and I stand up in front of all the passengers and do my PA
I'm the
from
same way. I
right.
did the same thing every time. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love walking back and meeting the folks because you never know who you're going to meet, who's back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hey, how you doing? Really
They
appreciate
like
your
that
business.
too. They love it.
They do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tell the guys, I go, the airline signs your paycheck, but they pay your salary. So don't ever forget that,
Yeah.
because in this world of I could buy a ticket on, airline A for $10 less than airline B, and you happen to work for airline B and everyone's going to A, maybe that
Hmm.
one time they'll remember the pilot, and that was a little special thing.
Yeah.
Maybe they pay the extra $10 because they maybe you're looking for another guy like you, you know.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. No, I agree. And I tell the young, because I mentor a lot of young ones coming up in the
Hmm.
ranks. And as you probably know, it's a different world than what we came up in. I think a lot of them, they like it, but they don't. I don't know if they have a lot of them have the passion we had going for it. There was no money in it
No.
when we got into it. I mean, when I flew Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell once to Aspen, and she asked me if I was going to go skiing, and I didn't have the heart to tell her I didn't have any money. I was broke. And here I am flying them in a jet into Aspen, you know. But I didn't care. I was doing what I wanted to do. It was a
Yeah.
passion, and I don't see that as much today. And so hopefully, guys like you and I can pass that passion on. Like, do you realize what you get to do?
Yeah.
The world that you get to, the way you get to see the world, unlike anyone, the people you get to meet. Like you, I used to go in back and I'd make my PA standing in front of them, and they loved
Hmm.
that. And
They do.
sometimes if I had enough time, I'd get my guitar out and sing for them. You know,
Ah,
and
now
and so
I can't do that, but that's cool.
it was fun. So it just they relate to oh my gosh, the guy's a human being. There's a
Yeah.
real person up there. And so uh, I always joke with my friends that, it's always about the landing, the,
Yeah.
and I tell my friends, it's just as a joke, sometime go up to your pilots next time you fly and just go, hey guys, I just wanted to tell you, a great bank turn out of Phoenix. That was amazing. Or great gear retraction, or just rather than just, what was that landing about, It's just kind of a joke.
Well, but it was funny is when I was a flight engineer, I used to make little questions up, and
Hmm.
I'd walk to the back of the airplane and I would hand out these questions to passengers. And I go, "Hey, everybody, the captain loves to take questions at the end of the flight.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
if you
That
want to
is
have a little
funny.
fun with the captain, ask him this question." And so at the end of the flight, the last 10 or 20 people coming up, sprinkled in there, they would go, "Hey, Captain, what's the max tire rotation of the nose wheel on the 727?" And he's like, uh, uh, and I'd go, "182 knots, sir." And he'd go, what he said, you know. And
That's
then
classic.
the captains would be like, "What the hell is up with all these people, man? They're always asking me these tough questions."
That's a good one. I like that. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to do that. Then, if I'm doing my PA and the FO sitting up there, he's not paying attention. Now I'll go, and oh, by the way, I'm flying with, Steve Smuckatelli, and Steve's an Air Force former test pilot. He likes to have his landings graded, so feel free to let him
To
know how he landed
create the
when you get off
landing.
the airplane.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, you're a character. You're like me. I'm the same way. Got to have fun.
Yeah, if you're not having fun, something's wrong, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then when
Absolutely.
things, and that's on the good. Those are the good days. 2 days ago, I had the bad day where we go push off the gate, everything's good, full boat of people. Went back there, walked to the back because we're going up to Richmond. I'm from Virginia. There was a
Hmm.
girl and her husband. They went to my college. They had the sweatshirt on. It was I really connected with all these people. We get off the gate. We go to start number two, and it
Mm.
won't start. Won't light off. Call maintenance.
Mm.
Maintenance says switch the igniters. Did you
Mm.
try the other igniters? No. Okay, so we try the other side. No. Nope, won't light off. You got to be kidding me.
Wow.
In 27 years, I've never seen this. So we go back to the gate, get pushed back to the gate, call maintenance. Maintenance comes out. The guy looks in the jet and he goes, "Oh man, your fuel spar, something's wrong with the fuel line and the fuel spar, something." And that's why it
Wow.
wasn't igniting. Well, if it did ignite, it would probably have this big fireball out the
A
back.
fire. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so it was a God thing. But I go back there and I get on the PA and I tell everyone what was going on and, gather up all your belongings because this jet is out of service. Make sure you check your seat back pockets. And I just want to, tell you all that in 27 years, I've never seen this, but
Hmm.
we are going to get you taken care of. We'll get you onto another flight and it may not be with us. And people are like looking at us and I go, here's the problem. The FO and I, we time out by certain rules, time wise, in
Uh-huh.
less than an hour. So this was built really tight, and now with this delay, I don't think
We're
we're going to be
done.
your pilots. But it was
Yeah.
really nice meeting each and every one of you, and thank you for coming to my airline. I really appreciate you. And once again, I'm
That's
so
so
sorry this happened.
cool.
And everyone
Wow.
came up, "Oh, hey, it was great meeting you, and you're funny, and blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And no one got
Yeah.
off the airplane pissed off, you
Yeah.
know.
I know. It's all it takes. It's amazing. But,
Because then they're nice to the flight attendants, and then you get your meals on time, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So,
now how many shows are you doing on your podcast? And tell everybody the name of your
oh,
podcast.
it's called Backstage Pass with Jeff Senior. It's just about remarkable people doing amazing things, and like you were on it, and
My
we don't
pleasure.
have a kind of a regular schedule. We're trying to get back into that through Barbara Beach. She produces it. She's amazing, and so and COVID kind of put a kibosh on some of it, and so we're getting back into it. But I've had Medal of Honor recipients. I've had pilots. I've had rock stars. I've had I just love interviewing people, kind of
Yeah.
like what you do. Just hearing their stories. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's
Hmm.
got And I love hearing stories of people that have insurmountable odds that accomplish things. And it's just, and I think people are hungry to hear those stories, about success and living your dreams. And because, life isn't always easy. It's not, we're going to be faced with ups and downs. And like I write in my book, there's thunderstorms in our way many times in life. And how do we get around them? And it's how we handle them, that makes us or breaks us. And so,
What's the name of your book?
it's called Life Lessons from 7 Miles High.
Dude, I'm going to have to buy one of those. And when I do, send it out to you and have you autograph it.
I would be
love
honored. Absolutely. No, I would be honored. It's on Amazon, and I can probably just send you one. And
No. I'll support my fellow pilot,
well,
7 Miles High.
I would be honored. What's cool is it's a lot of metaphors about aviation and how we see the Earth differently.
Yeah.
Because we're 7 miles or more high, and when I do speaking events, I'll talk about the compass. Why do we have a compass in a plane? Because we got to know what direction we're going, right? And we have to have a destination, because that's what determines our flight planning and our pre-flighting. And do you wake up in the morning and pre-flight your day? Do you have a plan? Do you have a goal? How many people do we know that are on autopilot, hoping life works out? Or are you the captain? You're the captain. Take control of it. You take your destination where you want it. So that's kind of the
that's
book.
funny. I teach goal setting to junior high students.
Okay.
I was a junior high and high school substitute school teacher, but when I was teaching goal setting to these kids, I called it the magenta line, and I tell them,
Wow.
when we fly to London on the big birds, when we're sitting there going from point A to point B, there'll be thunderstorms along the route, and you have to deviate left or right and come back and eventually get back on that magenta line to get you back to your destination.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because we use the magenta line in our NDs,
Everything we do, yeah.
Yeah, and I talk about everything in life, there are God points. And so as you're going along, right now, just I hate to use me as an example, but my sister died. And when my sister died, I felt like my life went way skewed to the left. And then I kind of got it back on path and, continued on with the journey. But if you go through life and then when you come back, sometimes you look at it and you go, the reason that I am here, I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been this incident at this time in this place.
Yeah.
And because of that incident, I ended up going right, which down the road caused me to get to this point, meet this person, and then go, that's a great idea, and go left, and then eventually work my way back around. And I got into a fist fight with a guy out in the Pacific Ocean. He was drunk. I wasn't. It was a 4 or 5 days in Wake Island. And I always felt like he kind of put a damper on my career because of that one incident, which,
wow.
He was a captain. I was a first lieutenant. But then I go to get away from the guy because a friend of mine pulls me inside, says he's definitely dampening your career expectations at the squadron. You probably ought to get as away as you can, far away. So I went to Japan. But when I was over there, maybe this XO and this person were friends. And let's just say I didn't even get into the squadron. I took a ground job and got to fly part-time. But because of that, I worked for an incredible guy. He was a major, I was a captain, who went on to be a 3-star general in the Marine Corps, and I worked for him later in Iraq. But because of that, I got my first medal, Navy Commendation Medal, which most captains didn't get. They'd get a Navy Achievement Medal based off their performance. But I was a commanding officer of a personnel support detachment. And just the way things worked, I went from there to recruiting duty. And on recruiting duty, after 3 years, I met a guy at a certain airline that I love, and he helped me meet the chief pilot, which got me hired. And here I am, right?
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
And so I was literally one day at my buddy's hangar. I just got done flying the fleet, and my fleet was parked out there with his Cub. We'd gone flying. We're drinking a beer, and I'd flown down from the other airport, and I was just going to put my airplane in his hangar. And so my wife shows up to pick me up, and she drove my Porsche. I had a Boxster at the time, and I was just sitting there looking, and I'm looking at the airplane. I look at my buddy. I look at my beautiful wife getting out of this car that defined me. I thought, Porsche, and I thought to myself, holy crap, it was kind of like that Talking Heads song, how did I get here? As the days go by and the water passes, I'm going, if that stuff had not happened, which up to that very moment, the revelation hit me, epiphany, if that stuff had not happened in my past and 1992, I wouldn't have taken the orders to Japan. I wouldn't have met that jackwagon at the squadron who, before I even got there, put me in a group at a ground job. I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to take the orders to Kansas City. I wouldn't have met this guy, Reb. I wouldn't have gotten hired at American. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have my kids now. I wouldn't have my job. I wouldn't have my life. So what you think of in the past as something bad happened to you, it's not. It's just, I think God points in your life sometimes to wake you up and sometimes to, get you going, because the ultimate destination down here can only be accomplished by a few of these deviations through life. And so I'm a big firm believer of that.
And God knows all along the whole destination,
Yeah.
That's what's amazing. We don't, it's like that song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. I think it was
Oh, I love that song.
So, because it's, at the time, we think it's devastating, but in the end, it's actually a blessing. It's so, that's a great story.
Garth Brooks, right?
I think it was, yeah. Good story. I love your story. It's pretty cool.
Ah, dude. Hey, when I retire, I've got two choices. I could be a greeter at Walmart, or I could go shoot Somali pirates, take a contract and drive Somali pirates off the side of ships, and then write my book in between, right? But if you ever need a wingman to come talk, man, I would love to join up with you one day, and we could have just the most positive, fun.
Well, we should be doing speaking events. We should go. What a team we'd make,
Dude, hire me, man. I'll go work for you any day. We'll go have some fun.
Well, and vice versa. Yeah. No, I mean, because we're on. We've got the same heart. We're out to inspire the world, and people love it. They need it, and even corporate events. I'd love to do more speaking events at corporate stuff. And my music is a mission of inspiring people. Everything I write, I've had the band 20 some years now. We're on iTunes and Spotify, and got signed by Universal Music. But everything I write's about living your dreams. It's about working hard. It's about kindness. It's love, forgiveness, all this stuff so when I get on a stage and play, that's my mission. It's not about, look at me, I'm a musician. It's about, I want people to walk away going, I love when a guy walks up after and goes, man, I've always wanted to learn to play guitar, and well, what are you waiting for? Go do it. Just go do it.
That's why I always love Groundhog Day. Bill Murray goes and it takes piano lessons, and at the end of the movie, he's like a wizard. I wanted to, if we had that one day every day that we could master something. If you had that, what would you go back and master now? If you could master something, endless time, you were caught in a loop like Groundhog Day, what would you, Jeff, master?
Oh my gosh.
Chinese?
That's a tough
German?
question. Maybe
Italian?
golf. Because I'm not very good at golf. So maybe, that's a tough question. I mean, because I'm pretty content with what, I don't have any regrets that I didn't get to do this or I didn't get to learn that. So I'll have to think about that one, but maybe
Yeah.
golf. So
Golf,
how
that's
about
a good answer.
yeah? How about you?
Probably better at wrestling. I mean, I
Okay,
was good and I loved it, but
I wrestle.
I
Yeah.
would like to do wrestling better because I got up
Hmm.
to the college collegiate level and I was a walk on. I was mat meet and I just got
Okay.
disheartened and I said,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm getting tired of being beat up by all the
You
guys.
and I have a lot in common. I
Uh,
wrestled too. I was a wrestler and a swimmer.
oh,
So,
were you
man,
really?
so you were a wrestler. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah, yeah. I
cool.
did 138, wrestled 7th through 12th, and then ran cross country and 880 mile relay and track in the spring.
Wow. Yeah,
But
that's amazing. Wrestling's kind of cool. I had when I was in, I don't know, later on in life, on a ski trip, and this buddy of mine who was a really good friend, we started kind of wrestle around. He was a lot taller than me, about six something, you
uh,
know, and we were kind of messing around. And I took him down in a few seconds, and he was just like, Where'd you learn to do that stuff?" I'm like, "Dude, I was a wrestler, man. That stuff never leaves you."
no, 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 no. Don't mess with the grappler because it just after
No.
what do they say? You have to practice something 1,000 times to get good at it, right?
Hmm.
How many times did you do the single leg takedown practice sweeps as you're going across
Yeah,
the mat,
over and over.
back
Yeah,
over and over and over and over?
yeah.
You just look at a
It's
guy.
muscle memory.
It
Yeah,
is. It
yeah.
is. There was
So,
you were talking about Medal of Honor recipient. I had Jim McLuhan. He was
hmm.
on one of our flights, and we were talking. He's an old wrestling coach, and
Oh,
I said,
okay.
"Oh man, I my best match I ever had. I wrestled against this guy who was a lot shorter than me, stockier. It was 145, and this
Hmm.
guy was just muscle. And I beat the guy. I beat the guy. It was a superior decision. Hold on a second. Let me look this up. Um, Jock Doc McLuhan. Um, I beat this guy superior decision. And he's like, that's not possible. I go, yeah, I beat him like 35 to nothing or something. And he goes, no, they did away with that. I'm like, oh, this was back in 83. And, and anyway, I put it on the internet and somebody found it.
Wow.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, here it is. 33 to 5.
Wow.
Let's see if I can get that. There
There
it
it
is,
is.
Blue Ridge.
Yeah, look at that. Wow.
So
Holy
down there,
cow.
superior decision, Bell over Karis, 33 to 5. How many times you ever seen a match like that? 33 points. I kept getting the guy down, kept rolling him over, and literally, I'd get him on his back. He'd arch up on his neck so I could never get the pin, and then
Uh-huh.
he would be arching off his neck, and he would bench press me and lift me up, and you know,
Wow.
and it kind of get me. And as he got off his back, I get behind him again, get the takedown, and
Yeah.
oh, it was just the worst
That's
six
quite
minutes
the
of my life.
score, man. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
love wrestling though. That was good.
Yeah, it was fun. Good stuff.
Art, I would like to do art. I think art would be good, and writing a book. So I definitely want to
Okay.
write a book. You're my hero
Yeah, do
for
it.
having accomplished that.
Well, yeah, that's fun. It's fun, and it's a keepsake you can give to people, or and your family, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely do that.
Well, I tell you what, I've had you on for an hour and 5. I don't mean to keep you that long, but you know what? If anybody in the peanut gallery has a question that you want to ask, maybe something Hollywood cool. I mean, I've only scratched the surface with Jeff, but if you've got a question to ask, put it in there real quick, and we'll run it by Jeff. So that I see Neil just says, "Hey, Taco Semper Fi." He's a Marine, so he's going to say hello. And
Semper Fi, brother.
oh,
Nice.
Bill said Gulfstream. I know what that was. That was when John Travolta had his electrical failure. That was
Oh,
in a
okay.
Gulfstream.
Bill McNeese. Yeah, that name sounds familiar too.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we don't have any questions in the comment section then to address, then I'll
Well, I
tell you
can't
what,
thank you enough.
we'll wrap this up. If you hang
Yeah.
out for just a few minutes, I want to talk to you. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming along with
Thank
us.
you, Taco. What an honor. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Keep up your
Uh,
great work and
oh,
and
you're
uh,
awesome.
a new friendship here that's going to bud and keep on going. So thanks
Yeah,
so
man.
much.
Hey, tell your wife I appreciate letting us borrow you for an hour or so. All right.
No worries. She's very good about it. So,
All right. Stand by
all
one
right,
second.
sir.
I'll say goodbye to
Okay.
everybody. Hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Jeff is just an incredible human being and so much stuff. Man of the hour. I'm going to have to put it in the comment section and go back and redo it and throw links into his band on YouTube and some of the videos that are just incredible, professionally made, sound great, and his music is phenomenal. To see him live is really, if you have the chance, if you can find out where he's playing at some event, definitely take him up on it and go see it. And then, of course, his book, he said 7 Miles High. So I'm going to buy that and then read it and then probably have him back on so I can talk about his book. But until then, you guys take care. We'll see you next time. Next week is going to be a great podcast with Henry Sledge. We call him Sledgehammer. His dad was Eugene Sledge, who wrote uh, With the Old Breed, and Henry just finished his book, which is a really insightful uh, from a son's point of view about his dad and a lot of missing and cut manuscript from the original book. So come join us next Tuesday. Adios, hasta luego, a wiedersehen, tschüss, sheshini, au revoir, domarigato gozaimasu, tando shinde okurasai, ciao, rividici, tashikur, assalamu alaikum, mahala, do widzenia, das vidania, and I think that's it. Let me see if I am going to go out with this one. Take care, guys.